Okay, so I'm going to be going through this tutorial really quickly, and it's going to be really straightforward and simple. Okay, so I'm in the Detective Bot game scene here in Unity, and the Detective Bot Storyteller scene here. Quick sidebar, I'm just going to exit. And I'm just going to show you where the scenes are. So if you, for some reason, can't find the scenes, right in T, I think I did this incorrectly. It's T, scene, and you can find all the type of scenes. Now the scene I'm in is this one, the QB Maru Detective Bot scene. Also already open over here, fine. And I'm just going to double click this to open the scene. Now I got this question before. Someone had asked me, how do I switch scenes? If you want to switch to a different game scene, you go to File, you exit the one that you're currently in, and you double click on another one to switch to it. That's how you do it. So anyways, I'm just going to quickly show you how to use your data in-game for a nonlinear game. So in this scene here, we have 4 characters. One is going to be a main character, which is going to be this guy. And he's going to be interacting with 3 different NPCs, NPC 1, NPC 2, and NPC 3. Now, let's see if there's anything else here. Nope. All right. So I'm just going to put the scene over here for now. We're just going to look through what's going on in the canvas. Hide that. So if you look in the timeline, we can see that we have 4 different characters. And if we look in the canvas, we can see we also have 4 different characters. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this character here is going to be our main character. So of course, our main character is going to be controlling how the story flows. Whatever the main character decides to do will influence the outcome of the story. And because our main character is going to be influencing the outcome of the story, we can make it so that everything the main character does can have an impact on the story. And that's down to a individual node basis. And I'll get to that when we are in the game scene, selecting nodes and trying to make things work. All right, but for now, this is going to be our main character. And we can just read this little bit here, and this will give us a whole lot of information as to what's going on. So our main character is going to determine what NPCs we speak to. And these have been named link to NPC 1 interaction, link to NPC 2 interaction, and link to NPC 3 interaction. Now, this will be different for whatever game you're creating. All games are different, all setups are going to be different. Some may be similar, but how you set it up is different. But what's going to be universal is the function that's going to be assigned to this route during game process, and whether or not whichever character you have is going to be in control of determining the flow of your story. All right, I'm just going to click auto arrange really quickly. Okay. Oh, and one of the things you really need to do, and I've had persons just try to immediately just make a game, which you can't do that yet. You need to familiarize yourself with the various nodes, the various functions that these nodes can execute, the settings in the properties window. And once you know that, and I've looked through the user guide, you're going to be ready to go. All right, so moving right along. So let's say we want to take this data and we want to have it run in game. What we would do is that we create a scene data file. So I'm going to delete this one really quickly. So let's say you've already written up all of your stuff. You have all your nodes in canvas, everything's how you want it to be. Now you want to use it in game. You right click in the project window, you go to create, and you go to GameBridge scene data, create a new scene data, and we're going to open up the GameBridge window. And with our scene data selected, we can choose a scene. The scene that we're currently in is called main scene, so we're going to select main scene, and we can push all 4 characters. By default, all your characters will be selected, and you can push that data over into your scene data, and that's it. Now this data can be used in multiple Unity scenes, and you can have multiple scene data with whichever characters you want to use in that particular scene data. Right now we're just going to be using all of these characters in the scene data. And if I create a empty game object and I go to my GameBridge window, whenever you select any game object, you will see an option to add any one of these 5 components to a game object. We want to add an interaction component to this game object. All right, once the interaction component is added, then this interaction component is going to be asking for a scene data. Let's just assign the scene data that we just made. And with that done, we can now select any node, and we can see node specific data for that particular node. So if we select this dialog node here, we can see all the dialog information in there. And this is a light version of Unity, so it's kind of weird. That actually should be dark, but whatever. Yeah. And so we select any node and we see the information relating to that node. It's just like the properties window. So whenever we select a node and look in the properties window, we can see all the information relating to that particular node. And what that allows us to do is execute node specific functions. So whenever our characters are running their node processes, we can have a particular node execute a specific function. Now, before we get deeper into this, we're going to be going into the game side of things now. So we already know how to create our nodes and stuff. We push that data into scene data, we add it to an interaction system, and now we're ready to use it in game. Now to give a quick overview of what this game is about, basically we have 4 characters, our main character, 3 NPCs. Our main character has to interact with these NPCs in order to retrieve a key card, which he then has to take to this NPC here. And if this NPC accepts the key card, it will let us into this hangar area here, where our main character has to set some values here, and that'll complete the game. And we can do this by using just really basic functions in the interaction system. Anyway, I'm just going to delete this interaction system component game object here that I just made. We're going to use the pre-existing one that comes with the example scene. So I'm going to hide these for now. All right. Where's the player? Here. Okay. So in order to have our characters interact, we need to have a on our player character, we need to have a collision interaction trigger component. So if we go to our bridge here, what I did was I added a collision interaction trigger. So collision trigger, and I'm sorry, I didn't mention one thing. On the interaction system, whenever you set up your interaction system, it adds a interaction trigger manager. You can just ignore that. That handles itself. If our character here has a collider on it, and we are using that collider to trigger a interaction with another collider, then we're going to add a collision trigger to it, collision interaction trigger. And on the NPC, we have a collision interaction receiver, which is attached to a game object, this big rectangular game object with a collider on it. So if I go to the inspector and look at that, we see collision interaction receiver. And the collision interaction receiver the trigger area game object with the collision interaction receiver has the tag NPC. And if we look at our character here, main character, on the collision interaction trigger, the target tag is NPC. So what this says is that our collision interaction trigger will trigger an interaction with any game object with a collision interaction receiver whose game object is tagged with NPC. All right, so that's straightforward. Now also on the NPCs, game object themselves, you need to have an interactable character. So in the game bridge area, I added an interactable character component to all the NPCs. So now they're interactable. So now you can interact with them. So we have our interaction system here that has our interaction component, also has our interaction trigger manager, which you don't need to do anything with. On our main character, we have our collision interaction trigger. On the NPC itself, we have our interactable character, so the character is interactable. On the trigger area that our character can walk into and begin an interaction, we have our collision interaction receiver, and the game object has a collider and is tagged with NPC, and also is tagged flagged is trigger. Now, we don't actually have to use a collision area to begin an interaction. We can either use a click listener, or we can use UI to begin the interaction. Both of those are used in a different example scene, which you can check out. But for now, in this particular game, we're using a collision interaction trigger and receiver. All right, so I'm going to just run the scene really quickly, and I'm going to show you exactly what's happening here. So I'm going to walk up to this NPC, and you'll see a UI pop up and a dialog inside the UI. And if we go to our story sample editor, refresh this really quickly, we can see the dialog that's going to be played out here. If we follow this particular path, that is. All right, so I'm just going to quickly exit. Now you're probably wondering, so yeah, how do you actually get that to happen? You showed us that you showed us the entire setup, how you attach the various components and set them, but how do you get that to work? All right, that brings us back to a couple of the components, two in particular, the interaction component and the interactable character. So for each NPC here, we've added an interactable character, as you remember, and each interactable character has use round number on because it's in non-linear. If it was linear, you'd have it off. And we have our NPC1, because we're an NPC1 interactable character. We set that route number to 0. And why did we do that? Because here our character decides what route to go on, and this would be route 0, this would be route 1, this would be route 2. So route 0 is for NPC1, route 1 is for NPC2, route 2 is for NPC3. So 0, 1, 3. So 0 representing NPC1, 1 representing NPC2, and 2 representing NPC3. But then again, how do we actually get our character to walk up to a NPC and have it choose the correct path for us and display that in a text area? that is also quite simple. As I said, we're two things we need to look at this point: the interactable character and the interaction component. We've looked at the interactable character. Now let's look at the interaction component. And as I said before, whenever you select a node, you see all that node specific information inside of the inspector of your interaction component. So if we select this route here, which is our character's first route, and we look at node specific conditions, and again, let's just talk about the conditions a little bit. So there are two types of condition systems. There's a node specific condition system and a general condition system. Node specific conditions only run for whatever for a single node. General conditions, when assigned, will run for all nodes, and you can have whatever function you want inside of any condition system. For this condition system, I'm telling it to automatically start, and whenever we walk up to any NPC, it's going to run a function which is interaction continue on route. Now the processes for this happen automatically, and it's created specifically for situations like this, where you need to have a character walk up to just about any kind of other character and be able to interact with it without having to do a bunch of different settings. So this handles all of your all of those various settings that you'd have otherwise had to set up yourself. So it may seem like it's just doing it out of nowhere, but in the background it's actually doing quite a bit. Now how this is actually working is that we can actually walk up to any NPC and the route will automatically switch, and we'll be able to interact with that particular NPC. Now how it's working is, again, remember the value for this one is 0, this is 1, and this is 2. Whenever the continue on route function is run, it's going to be taking that value and telling the system to generate a interaction for whatever data is on route 0, 1, or 2. So that happens all in the background, and it's just to kickstart the entire process. We just do that. All right, so now you know how we begin our interactions. Oh, and also to actually get the UI up, I simply just switch on the UI here. I simply just set this to active, set active, whenever we walk up to an NPC. And that's how that works. Now, let's go ahead and look at whatever other settings there are. There are no specific settings on anything else. Let's go to NPC1. Hey, NPC1, I need to get into the hangar. Do you have an ID? All right, let's go to this. This is NPC1. Do you have an ID? Let's see if there are no specific conditions on this one. All right, so we do have a node specific condition, and let's see what happens in game. So I'm going to run the scene, and at this point I want you to think of this as functions that have been set up after testing game a little bit, because the initial focus when creating a story is just to write out your story. You don't focus on functions and stuff like that. With the Storyteller, what you can do is you can make as many mistakes as you want in the canvas, and when you're testing in game, you can edit that data live. You can add whatever nodes you want live and change it up, exit, push your data again, and test again. So this is why I'm saying you should just focus on writing. You don't need to worry about your game at this point. All right, so I'm just going to walk up to the NPC here, and we're going to see what this information is all about. So we're going to say, hi NPC, when I need to get into the hangar. And then next, when I go to when NPC replies, the NPC is going to say, do you have your ID? And you're going to notice that automatically the UI changed. And that's because here, if we select this and we go to no specific conditions, I did something interesting, which is that, oh, there's quite a few no specific conditions. Let's see what they're about. So this one is auto start off, and it's not an if statement. Well, actually, it might have run by itself. I'm gonna exit and see the setting first. Yeah, auto start is off, so I'm just gonna do it again. Scroll down, scroll down. Okay, yeah, anyways, fine. I'll explain what that is. All right, so hey NPC, when I need to get into the hangar, we click next. Do you have an ID? And it's gonna move next automatically. All right, so how this works is that here, I need this one. It's gonna have its where is it? Auto start on here, and the next button set to false. So we disabled our next button. That was before we got to this point. This is something different. And scroll down here. So the next condition that ran was this one, and it went like this. It did an if statement check. So it said it checked our main character here. It checked our main character and said if main character example condition 2 that I have ID card equal true, then let's see, I have an ID card equal true, then it's going to run this function. Let's see on our character here, main character, I have an ID card is equal to false, so it didn't run that one. We're gonna go ahead and select interaction system again. All right, so that one's obvious for later. One has moved next on it. Let's see if it's this one. Use time is on, real time delay. Good. All right, so here's the one that moved next. So if we check our settings here, real time delay is 0.94 seconds. So what happens is that we run this. I'm just going to run towards them. Hey NPC, when I need to get into the hangar, it's going to wait 0.94 seconds. It's going to switch because we have use time set to on, and we're doing a interaction that move next. So what this does, it moves to the next next node. And for us, that would be click 16 dialog. Be about here, right here. Our first choice, this is where it moves to. And it gives us the option of choosing yes or no. And depending on what we choose, our outcomes will be different. Well, I need to clean this thing up a little bit. Select where is it? Oh, here it is. This here. All right, good. Yeah, depending on which one we choose, our outcomes will be different. So we can choose yes or no. One of these is yes, one of these is no. So yes, I found it. If you click yes, and no would be the other path here. We can choose whichever one we want to choose. Now going back to this here, as you see, we have quite a few other stuff here. that we did not run, but these will be run later on into the game. So as I said before, you don't focus on immediately trying to create your game. You focus on writing your story, and then once your story is written and you're in game, you can decide to make iterations on top of your interactions and formulate functions around it to facilitate really immersive interactions. So like this one, I believe that this is going to be run sometime later on, and I'll figure it out when I'm there, if I get to this point. But I think you already get the idea of what's happening here. All right, so I'm going to click yes, and I'm going to say yes, I found it. I'm going to click yes, next, and then it says okay, I will scan you for the ID. I don't know which one that is. I'm gonna grab this again. It says actually I should refresh. Say I will scan you for the ID, and this one should also have a node specific condition that does a automatic move next. Okay, here it is. Use time is on. It's using a real-time delay, which in this case is 0.63 seconds. And then it moves next, and then there's another one down here which auto start is on. Game object that's set active next button, so it turns back on our button again so that we can move next here. So we can move next here. Now it scanned us for the ID, and I believe it said okay, I'll scan you for the ID. Okay, here it is, scan player for ID result. And this is a route that the route here is determined by our NPC and not our player in this case. So the NPC actually determines what the route's going to be based on the results that it finds. So it's scanning our player for ID result. So what this is going to be doing is that it's going to be checking our character. Example condition 2 has ID card equal to false. Then it's going to run this condition, run this function. Else it's going to run this function. If our character example condition 2 has ID card is equal to true, then it's going to go to route 1, else it's going to go to route 0. So you get the idea of how this whole thing works. You write your story, you make sure your story flows the way you want it to flow, and then you can get into the weeds of setting up detailed functions in your condition system, so you don't actually have to write any form of complex code whatsoever. The code that's being used for the example condition stuff here, if I open this up, it's something really simple. So it's the 85 lines. It's just some really simple stuff. Literally just booleans here. Literally just booleans that we're checking. Literally all just booleans. And this entire process happens over and over again until we acquire the ID card and the NPC lets us into the hangar, and we're able to complete the game. Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and select this. Just move this up, clean that up a bit. All right, I'm just gonna continue a little bit here. Next time you come back, if you don't have your ID, I'll never let you in. I think that I set up something for this too. So what I did was I set up a consequence for our NPC, for our player line. So next time if you come back, I think this is it. Oh yes, I did. So here's a check. So here's something that I did after testing in game. So I wrote my story. I had everything flowing the way I wanted it to flow. And then I realized that what if I created a little consequence for the player lying to the NPC. So I added a little route here that says check if player was here once before. This is our first time speaking to this NPC. So if we select this and we check our set the interaction system, and we scroll down, auto start is on. Oh, I actually didn't set it up for this one, but yeah, we could set a boolean that checks if we have already interacted with the NPC. So at this point here, we would set in the no specific condition, we would say something like auto start is on, and actually we say auto start is on, and then we would set a flag here that says something like this character example condition 2 spoke to NPC 1 already. Yeah, spoke to NPC 1. We set that to true, and then here we can do a check to see if that value is equal to true. And if it's equal to true, and if it's true, then we're just going to switch down here to route 1 and do something bad, maybe completely restrict our player from accessing the ID card. So we could do that. So again, focus on just writing out the story, make sure it flows the way you want it to, and after that, when you're testing in-game, you can make iterations on your story at runtime, but do not push your story at runtime. Though I've actually never tested that. I wonder if I should test it now. May break something, I don't know. Actually, I'll not do that. Anyway, so that's how that works. I mean, that's how all of it is structured, really. That's really how all of it's structured. We have the story, and then we focus heavily on utilizing the node specific conditions. Sure, we do. Do I use general conditions here at all? I do not. So I don't use any general conditions. I use node specific conditions only. And that's really how I do the entire game. Just the data here. And we just push it to a scene data, put it in our interaction system, and set some values in the node specific conditions. All right, closing that. Now some more specific information here that you'll need is you can get really in depth with using conditions. So you can have an if statement here. You can add another if statement. So if this condition is met or it's not met, well, it's always is met, and this other condition is met and another condition is met, you can have as many conditions inside of here as you want. And it's going to check all of them, and if they're met, then you can run a function. And you can also have a condition control another condition. So if I add another condition here, condition system, I can see interaction system, interaction turn off condition 0. So it's going to switch off this condition. And I'm just going to remove it. I'm going to remove these. All right. Now to look through some of the other settings here. As you know, you're going to need to set up a UI. If you're using a UI, you don't actually need to use a UI at all. If you're using voiced content, then you don't need to use a UI. If you're only using voice content, you don't need to use a UI. Then you just turn off use text. And under here we have our keyword filters. This is covered in the user guide. I highly recommend reading the user guide. And we have our general conditions here, which works exactly like the node specific conditions, except they will run continuously on all of your nodes. The same condition will run on all of your nodes. That is all continuously. And underneath that, I have auto start all conditions by default. I'd recommend not hitting this. You hit the switch, you're going to need to go back through all your nodes and then make sure they're not auto started. Or you can just undo. Now you have your markup editor, which is also explained. So you can change your font styles. So if you check your markup tag examples, you can have your fonts be styled differently in game if you're using text. You can override your voiceover clips. You can override a sound effect clip for the particular nodes. We're not doing any of that. Now we are down to where we have our times. So we have 4 different times here. We have our start time, our duration, delay, and a real-time delay. If I go ahead and switch this on, I should get my information here. All right, so it says the start time, duration, and delay here are a reflection of the start time, duration, and delay of the selected node. So the start time of a node is basically, for example, the start time of this node here, 19, is going to be 3.81 seconds about. And the duration is going to be 1 second, I believe. Yeah. And the delay is going to be 2 point, yeah, delay between is going to be 2.81 seconds. And the real-time delay is defined as, well, the real-time delay is set at runtime. It is recommended that you use real-time delay instead of delay. All right, so that's why we just use real-time delay. And I'm just going to turn off the help messages here. So these are really, the help messages is really helpful if you need it. And then underneath that, we have our node specific conditions again. Now there are other functions, other settings for the node specific conditions. You have your once per frame and you have once per node data. Once per frame really means that if we're running a node specific condition, that condition on the node will run per frame. Once per node data means that once it's processed, it will just not run again. By default, we want it once per frame, which is fine. And only one node will ever be processing no specific data, so it's not slow at all. Now you have auto start. If you have auto start, then everything here is going to be disabled and you're just going to automatically start your function. So we want auto start off. If you're using time and you're using a real-time delay, then of course it's going to disable everything again because the function is going to be triggered after X amount of time. Now you can use your real-time delay, duration, or a custom time. Now it's recommended to use real-time delay, so we're using real-time delay. I'm going to turn it off because I want to actually check a if statement here before I run a function. Actually, there's nothing there to run anyways. So we're on 40 something minutes, I believe. So as you can tell, we can't go through the entire thing. You can sit down and check it out in detail if you want, and you don't necessarily need to. There's just one more thing that's been covered quite a few times before, So here on our choice here, we make sure to link nodes together. So how we ensure that a choice made by the player affects other NPCs is by linking their routes together. So if I switch a route here, then the data switches here also. And that happens because if we click on this link here, it's now linked to first choice match. So depending on what we do here, the outcome of our story also changes. So that's going to be it for this video. There will be more videos in the future. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.